Some losses pay off better than victories.
When I got laid off, my wife gave me a smug little smile. Figured this would happen sooner or later, she muttered. What she didn't realize, I had just finalized the sale of a tech patent for a cool $167 million. So when she rushed to file for divorce, convinced she'd found someone more successful, I didn't argue. I let her walk away with whatever she asked for. A few months down the line, the truth surfaced. Suddenly, she and her attorney were left speechless. But let's take it back to where it all began. My name's Adrian Okoye, and if you're under the impression that love naturally follows success, I've got news that'll shatter that fantasy. It all kicked off at some rooftop event high above downtown Seattle, a place where the drinks had names no one could pronounce, and every conversation sounded like a pitch deck. I was halfway through a pretentious craft IPA when I spotted her. Sabrina Holt. She didn't just walk into the space. She took command of it. Radiant, intelligent, self-assured. The kind of woman whose presence bends the room around her. Her voice turned heads. She was holding court with a crowd of finance bros. And even though I'm not the guy who typically walks up to women like her, something pushed me to make a move. Adrian Okoye, I said, reaching out my hand. She gave me the kind of once-over usually reserved for job resumes. Sabrina Holt, junior associate at Harrington and Pike, she replied. Software engineer, I said. I build things that don't crash under pressure. She let out a genuine laugh, not the polite kind. And just like that, we were off, chatting about everything from her ongoing merger case to the algorithm I'd been refining. Usually, people's eyes glaze over when I talk about code, not hers. She leaned in, asked sharp questions, actually listened. I'm into brains, she said, eyebrow arched. We didn't even notice the party had thinned out until it was nearly empty. She glanced at her phone. I should probably head out. Can I have your number? She smiled. Why not? What followed was a blur of texts, dinners, and long weekends. I fell hard and fast. You look at her like she's your last shot, my best friend Tarek said. Maybe she was, but it didn't feel desperate. It felt right. We found our rhythm. Her world of high heels and litigation, mine of laptops and hiking trails. Somewhere we met in the middle. 6 months later, I bought a ring worth more than my car and proposed on the same rooftop. Lights, champagne, the whole rom-com script. She laughed in that effortless, elegant way and said yes. At the time, I thought I'd won. I didn't realize I'd just signed up for a different game. For a while, we looked like the dream couple. Great jobs, a sleek townhouse, and matching ambition. I led a butcher dev team at Vectorium Systems. She was on the fast track to partner. We were crushing it, on paper. But marriage, it's often just a polished performance hiding cracks underneath. I missed the signs, or ignored them. Buying a house felt like a milestone. Banks rolled out the red carpet. Sabrina naturally handled all the paperwork. We were homeowners in 6 weeks, drowning in debt disguised as achievement. Next came the SUV. Her Honda wasn't homeowner material anymore, so we picked up a shiny used Toyota, practical status. Then her parents entered the picture. Beatrice and Gerald Holt used to see me as a gamble. Brown skin, big ideas, not their vision for their daughter. But once they saw the mortgage with my name on it, I became Adrian, the stable son-in-law. Gerald started treating me like his personal tech advisor. Beatrice nodded politely while evaluating our zip code and interior design. Suddenly, I'd gone from risk to retirement plan. Sabrina, of course, thrived in the lifestyle. Subtle luxury, upscale dinners, quiet prestige. She loved the reinvention, new cities, boutique getaways, curated experiences. I went along. Seeing her happy felt like a win. Our social life expanded. Monica, her law school bestie, glamorous and blunt. Victor from my team, brilliant and charming. He could trade legal jargon with Sabrina and talk code with me. Then there was Aunt Ngozi, my father's sister, our grounding force. Faithful, wise, and unimpressed by wealth. Money's good, she'd say, but don't let it own you. Sabrina would smile politely, but I knew she filed those words away as outdated. To the outside world, we were the picture of success. But we were building on shaky ground. In our 3rd year, the cracks widened. Vectorium hit a wall. No bonuses, layoffs looming. The buzz was gone. Then came the turning point. At a company meeting, our CEO casually dropped this. If we're acquired, any independent employee patents remain the inventor's property. I froze, because sitting in my desk drawer was a patent I'd filed myself, an algorithm light years ahead of the market. It wasn't Vectorium's. It was mine, completely. While the company sank, I was sitting on gold. Sabrina had no clue. I wasn't just a coder. I was relentless. Late nights, solo projects, always thinking 2 steps ahead. I didn't rely on job security. I relied on ownership. That algorithm, my masterpiece. It made clunky systems run like dreams. It had zero ties to the company. No one knew. Not my boss, not my team, not Sabrina. Well, except one person, Marta Chan. Marta had been in my corner since the beginning, an unshakable force in tech who'd weathered every crash Silicon Valley could dish out. When I told her about my patent and the loophole the execs accidentally revealed, something about personal IP surviving acquisition, she didn't blink. "Adrian," she said, eyes narrowed behind her coffee mug, "when the sale comes, and it will, don't rush. Get a lawyer, stay quiet, and never negotiate without leverage." "You really think they're selling?" "They're hemorrhaging cash. Someone's going to scoop them up. And when they do, your algorithm becomes the main attraction." I left the cafe buzzing, not from caffeine, but from clarity. After months of feeling stuck, I had something real, not a backup plan, but an escape hatch. I couldn't wait to tell Sabrina. Not the details, just something to lift the weight. But the second I stepped inside, the air turned cold. "No bonus. Again," she said, arms folded like a verdict was coming down. "The whole company's—" "Don't!" She cut me off. Her voice, detached, like I was a poor investment she was regretting. "There are changes coming," I said, trying to hint at hope. She scoffed, sharp, humorless. "You always say that. Meanwhile, I'm carrying this house on a junior associate's salary while you keep selling dreams." That's when it clicked. She hadn't fallen for my passion or potential. She'd bet on a payoff. And now that things looked shaky, so did her loyalty. Standing in our kitchen, I realized she wasn't looking at her husband. She was evaluating an underperforming stock. I couldn't argue. I just muttered, "I'll figure it out," while she turned away like she already had. That night in bed, lying beside someone who felt more like a stranger than a spouse, I wasn't sure anymore. Was I hiding the patent out of fear, or was I just learning how to survive? Maybe she hadn't changed. Maybe this was always her. By year 4, the transformation was undeniable. Her promotion hit in March, mid-level at Harrington and Pike. Overnight, she got the title, the clients, the voice that never stopped negotiating, even at home. The warm, funny woman I married was gone. In her place was someone sharp, ambitious, and constantly measuring everything, including me. "Image matters," she'd say when I suggested takeout instead of trendy $80 dinners. If our lifestyle didn't match her vision, it wasn't just inconvenient, it was unacceptable. So the spending slowed. Dinners out became rare. Trips vanished. She hated it. Budgeting felt like a cage she couldn't escape. That's when the late nights started. "Strategy sessions," she'd explain, rolling in near midnight, if at all. "Client dinners, networking. You do know what that is, right?" "Sure, because nothing says career advancement like coming home at sunrise, wearing cologne I didn't own, and acting like I was the problem for noticing. I didn't have to snoop. Instagram told me everything. Smiling at bars, no ring, glass in hand, posing with guys who definitely weren't female coworkers. She didn't look married. She looked available. If I brought it up? Colleagues, Adrian. Grow up. Maybe if you understood networking, you wouldn't be stuck in middle management. That one landed hard. She used to brag about me, the guy building the future. Now, I was baggage. Tarek, my best friend, saw it clearly. "She's grading you," he said one night, "and moving the goalposts." "What does that mean?" "She's deciding whether you're still worth the bet she made. Right now, you're not passing." I couldn't even argue, because deep down, I knew he was right. She wasn't just annoyed. She was reassessing everything, and I was the liability. So I tried harder, cooking elaborate dinners we couldn't afford, hoping to remind her why she said yes. She'd compliment the food, then suggest we should be out more. People notice when you disappear. I listened more, asked about her day, her clients, her cases. But every answer came with a reminder that her world was more important, more serious. Litigation isn't coding, Adrian. This is real. Like I was playing while she did brain surgery. The silence at home grew unbearable. We'd sit at the fancy kitchen island she insisted we install and barely speak. It was like we were co-tenants, not a couple. Whenever I tried to talk about us, the topic circled back to money. Always money. My lack of it, her success, our slipping image. What hurt most wasn't her words. It was how I started believing them, that maybe I really wasn't enough. But every night, I'd lie awake thinking about that patent, that one untouched piece of brilliance, The reminder of who I was before she started defining me by what I wasn't. And then I saw it clearly. I wasn't failing her test. I never agreed to take it. Then came the silence before it all broke, like the quiet in a thriller, just before everything explodes. That was the vibe the day Victorium collapsed. 1 minute, the execs were preaching resilience. The next, a press release. Megatech Solutions acquires Victorium Systems. Translation? They wanted our clients, and maybe a few engineers. The rest of us? Dead weight. HR called me in that Tuesday. I walked out with a severance check, just big enough to sting, just small enough to insult. Now I had to go home and tell Sabrina her worst fears had come true. Severance is just hush money in a fancy envelope. They want you to vanish without asking why. Most people take it and fade out. I almost did. Open LinkedIn, force a smile, and start applying, hoping you're not too expired for tech now that you're over 30. But this time I wasn't just another laid-off dev. I had something no one else did. A patent. A clean, airtight idea sitting in my desk drawer. And for the first time in a long time, I had leverage. Everything unraveled faster than I could plan for. I hadn't even figured out how to explain it to Sabrina before she saw the truth written on my face. I came through the door, cardboard box in hand. Her eyes flicked up from her phone. "You got fired," she said flatly. I set the box on the counter, beside the untouched fruit bowl, and tried to sound steady. "They sold the company, brought in new leadership. I got severance." She didn't ask if I was okay. She just laughed, cool and smug. "Of course you did. I knew this would happen eventually." Then came the real jab. "You were never built for my world." Suddenly, I wasn't her husband. I was a failed project, something beneath her. She repeated it at dinners with friends, over wine with her parents. "Adrian's a good man, just not cut out for my circles." Dressed like compliments, every word a cut. But I didn't push back. Not yet. I still had my patent. The one thing she didn't understand and couldn't touch. That Sunday, Aunt Ngozi showed up like she always did, with pepper soup and sharp instincts. She sensed the tension and pulled me aside, pressing a small silver cross into my palm. "Don't fight in front of her," she said. "Build quietly. Win before she knows there's a game." I didn't tell her about the patent or the companies reaching out, not yet. I just nodded and held on to something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. That night, after Sabrina went to bed, I sat in my office and read the patent again. Beneath all the legal jargon was a blueprint for escape. For once, I let myself smile. She was right. I didn't belong in her rooms. I was meant to own the building. Then came the envelope, hand-delivered, of course. Divorce papers, no warning, no therapy talk, just cold precision. Under reason, Sabrina had written, "I've outgrown this relationship. I need an upgrade. Not a metaphor, not even a soft landing, just a business transaction." She wanted everything, the house, the SUV, the art, the appliances, even alimony, as if I still owed her for the lifestyle she'd enjoyed while dismantling our marriage. I didn't rage. I felt free. Divorce wasn't a war. It was the closure neither of us had the courage to ask for. I called Ifeoma Duru, sharp, unflinching, and the one lawyer who could turn a loss into a strategy. "They think you're broke," she said. "Are you?" "Not entirely," I said. "Barely true." "Then let's pretend you're strong. No monthly cycles, just one lump sum, with a clause. No future claims. Ever. If Sabrina got rich, off limits. If I did, same rules." "You sure about that?" Ifeoma asked. I thought of Sabrina's condescension, her laughter, the companies showing quiet interest in my patent. "Make it final." The negotiations were brisk. Sabrina's lawyer grumbled. Sabrina didn't blink. She wanted out. Thought she was walking away with the win of the century. I signed. Calmly. 2 weeks later, I wired the payment, packed 2 bags, and left without a backward glance. Sometimes the smartest investment isn't holding on. It's knowing when to walk away. 3 months later, I was living above a bakery in Fremont. No luxury, no curated style, just creaky floors, decent Wi-Fi, and the warm smell of sourdough every morning. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No show-home pressure, no performance, just peace. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. I wasn't searching for jobs. I wasn't panicking about bills. I wasn't wondering if my marriage was still alive. I was waiting. And then the calls came, not friends or headhunters, real players, companies who had followed my patent from day one. Startups, mid-tier firms, innovation labs, all eager to license what I'd built. I'd spent years being told I didn't belong. Now, They wanted to buy what I'd created. And for once, I wasn't the one knocking. That's when I called Ifeoma. Divorce teaches you one thing. Never make major money moves without someone who knows the game better than you and charges enough to care. Adrian, she said, you don't need a divorce attorney. You need a business lawyer, a tax strategist, and probably a therapist. You're about to be everybody's new best friend, and most of them will be lying. That's how I met Luis Romero, a tax genius with the ethics of a mob accountant and the brain of a Wall Street wizard. He was Ifeoma's go-to for building legal fortresses around wealth. Luis laid out the plan like he was preparing for war. We'll create an LLC to own the patent and handle negotiations. Then we form a trust that owns the LLC. You're the beneficiary, not the owner. It keeps your name out of it and out of reach. It was a fortress of paperwork. I called it overkill. Luis called it smart. When you're about to make life-changing money, you want as many walls as possible between you and the people who'll come for it. Exes, debt collectors, the IRS. Negotiations stretched 6 weeks. Watching lawyers duel over something I'd built in my spare time was surreal. The algorithm turned out to be more than useful. It was a game changer, something that could save corporations millions while boosting their performance tenfold. Every company wanted exclusive rights. No one was looking to share. And in a twist of cosmic irony, the winner of the bidding war was Megatech Solutions, the same company that had kicked me to the curb just a year earlier. Now, they were paying what Luis called life-altering money, the kind of sum that completely transforms your relationship with wealth. The deal closed in Ifeoma's conference room. I sat off to the side as high-priced lawyers debated decimal points. It felt like I was watching someone else's story, until the final number slid across the table, $167 million, for something I built while stress-coding through insomnia. I signed the contract calmly, trying to look like I did this every Tuesday, even though I'd been eating instant noodles 3 nights a week. Then I walked out, turned off my phone, and went to the pier where Sabrina and I used to spend our early dates, back when we believed in forever. I stood there for an hour, letting the wind and the water do whatever they needed to do to me. I didn't call anyone. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. Then I went back to my tiny apartment above the bakery and did something no financial advisor would ever endorse. I went to sleep. No shopping spree. No wire transfer confirmation. Just sleep. The next day, I built a team. Marta Chen signed on as my advisor. She'd survived 2 decades in tech without selling her soul, and could detect corporate BS before it entered the room. Victor, a former colleague, came in as head of engineering, probably just as sick of short-sighted bosses as I was. And Keisha Williams, the most efficient ops expert I'd ever met, rounded out the squad. We paid ourselves modestly, enough to live well, not loud. The rest went into building real tools, better systems, and the kind of company I used to dream about when I was too burned out to believe it was possible. And I slept. Not the twitchy, crash and burn sleep of anxiety, but deep, clean sleep. The kind that only comes when you know you're finally okay. No one knew. Not my neighbors, not my former coworkers, not even Aunt Ngozi. I was still just Adrian, the quiet software guy above the bakery who was dealing with divorce like a champ. The money stayed untouched, guarded by legal scaffolding built by people far smarter than me. It grew quietly, waiting for whatever came next. And for the first time since Sabrina Holt smiled at me across a rooftop party all those years ago, I felt like I'd finally won something. But secrets don't last forever. Not in this age. Sooner or later, someone notices when the guy clipping coupons stops caring about prices. And when that someone has a law degree, an axe to grind, and a nose for buried treasure, well, that's when everything starts to unravel. The mess began like it always does, with someone sticking their nose where it didn't belong. Monica Patterson. Sabrina's law school bestie turned gossip queen. The same woman who couldn't resist documenting Sabrina's glow up from happily married to back on the market, one cocktail at a time. Monica didn't gossip outright. She collected it, stored it, then dropped it like a bomb when the timing felt just right. With no job to keep her busy, Monica apparently took up recreational stalking. That's how she pieced together my supposedly suspicious behavior after the divorce. Daily visits to Romano's bakery, a stagnant LinkedIn page, a casual group photo from a Capitol Hill coffee shop where I looked far too content for someone supposedly broke. Nothing dramatic, nothing overt. But Monica had a radar for trouble, and time to dig. Then came her masterpiece, a not-so-subtle Instagram story featuring a pricey cocktail and a caption that read like a passive-aggressive haiku, something about truth, karma, authenticity, and friends who keep it real. It wasn't subtle, but it was effective. Within hours, I started receiving the usual checking-in texts from mutuals. Disguised concern meant to sniff out a scandal. I ignored them, acted like nothing was happening, and kept my mouth shut. Because when it comes to rumors, silence is your best defense. Deny too hard and you look guilty. Engage at all and you're admitting there's something worth talking about. But Sabrina didn't believe in letting rumors breathe on their own. After 2 weeks of unusually quiet social media behavior, she came back online with all the warmth of a loaded tool. Gone were the glow-up quotes and divorce selfies. In their place, calculated silence and precision. The next move came Tuesday morning. Another delivery from a courier, just like before. Only this time, the envelope was thicker, heavier, and clearly more expensive. Inside was a motion to reopen financials, stacked with allegations crafted like a legal thriller. According to her new legal team, some top-dollar firm clearly hired to replace her former one, I had pulled off a massive scheme. Hidden assets, undisclosed income, fraudulent intent. A plan so elaborate, they made me sound like a Silicon Valley Bond villain. One paragraph claimed I'd buried income, intellectual property, pending negotiations, anything that might have increased her cut. They painted the picture of a guy who tricked his wife into accepting a lowball deal while sitting on a gold mine. And here's the thing, they weren't entirely wrong. I had been in talks. I did know the value of my patent was about to skyrocket. And yes, I signed the settlement knowing my financial future looked promising. But none of that mattered in court. The deal was done. The ink was dry. And more importantly, I'd protected myself with a very specific clause, the one my attorney, Kane Whitlow, had called aggressively airtight. Sabrina's whole argument was based on timing, specifically that I'd hidden assets before the divorce. But every penny from the patent sale went into a trust, not my pocket. The patent was filed in my name long before things unraveled between us, and every transaction, agreement, and email was dated, filed, and legally sound. The real kicker? That clause Sabrina had breezed past when signing. The one that barred either of us from ever making financial claims against the other, no matter what happened down the line. She'd literally signed away her right to any future money, then sued me for exactly that. A move so tone-deaf it was almost impressive. I called my lawyer, Ifioma, as soon as I finished reading the motion. "You need to see this," I said. She actually laughed. "Adrian, this is next-level stupid. They're accusing you of fraud for not being psychic. So we fight?" "Oh, we'll do more than that," she said. "We'll counterclaim. Breach of settlement, frivolous litigation, legal fees. If they want a war, we'll make them pay for it." For the first time in a while, I felt something like joy. The kind that creeps up your spine and reminds you that sometimes, just sometimes, karma lets you watch the crash in real time. Sabrina wanted to play hardball. Fine. But she was about to learn that there's a difference between fighting someone who's desperate and someone who's calm, armed, and ready to burn it all down just to watch justice win. There's something sacred about courtrooms when you're not the one in the crosshairs. The hush, the formality, the solemn energy like you're standing before a god of judgment. King County Superior Court, Judge Marisol Morales, and Sabrina, standing there trying to convince the world that she deserved a piece of a future she'd already given up on. This wasn't about justice for her. It was regret dressed up in legalese. A second shot at wealth she'd once mocked as impossible. But now she'd walked right into a courtroom built on facts, contracts, and cold reality. And I was more than ready to let the truth do the talking. Judge Morales didn't look like someone you could sway. Mid-50s, steel gray hair pinned back tight, and eyes that had seen it all and cared for none of the theatrics. 12 years on the bench had made her the kind of judge who dealt strictly in facts, not performances. Sabrina looked polished and deliberate at the plaintiff's table. Sharp suit, glossy hair, and a calm confidence that came with money and planning. She'd clearly slimmed down since the divorce, her face now more sculpted, almost cold. Success had chiseled her. She wasn't alone. Instead of Kane Whitlow, she'd brought Marcus Chun, top-tier divorce shark from Blackstone and Associates. His tailored suit and stone-faced expression screamed elite. Opposing counsel probably felt broke just standing near him. Chun's opening line hit like a gavel. "Your Honor, my client was misled. The defendant hid assets, manipulated financial details, and cheated Mrs. Holt out of a fair settlement." Every word sounded etched in stone, and I had to admit he was good. He painted a picture of poor Sabrina, tricked by a cunning ex-husband. hidden wealth, fraud, a settlement she never would have accepted if she knew the truth. He made her look like a victim and me like a con artist. His version? I'd concealed a $160 million patent sale during our divorce, portraying it as a calculated move, not a lucky break. And taken at face value, it kind of sounded like that. Sabrina nodded like this was all news to her. Heartbroken, betrayed, convincingly wounded, I imagined her practicing that face in the mirror. Then Ifeoma stood, cool, calm, and precise. Your Honor, she began, the plaintiff's case is built on a flawed understanding of both the timeline and legal obligations. She wasn't dramatic. She just laid it out. 1. The patent sale happened 3 months after the divorce, not 3 days. By then, Sabrina had changed her name, started dating, and posted half her life on Instagram. 2. The patent had always been mine, filed under my name, funded with my money, and built with my skills long before things fell apart between us. 3. I never pocketed a dime. The proceeds went straight to a trust. On paper and in practice, I was no richer than when we signed those papers. And then came the final blow. Ifeoma pulled out our divorce agreement and read the key clause aloud. Both parties agree this settlement is final. Neither can seek future financial claims, regardless of changes in income, success, or fortune. She reminded the court that Sabrina had signed it willingly, with full legal advice. Even after being warned it might be overly restrictive, she'd wanted a clean break. She didn't think I'd ever be worth more than my severance check. Judge Morales listened, scribbled a few notes, then locked in. Mr. Chun, are you arguing your client should profit from a poor judgment call? Ms. Duru, was there any legal requirement for disclosure of speculative income? And to both, how can there be hidden assets when those assets didn't legally exist yet? Chun tried to pivot, talking about fairness, public policy, disclosure, but the case was slipping from his grip. Judge Morales didn't need a break to think. She shut her folder and finally looked directly at Sabrina. Motion denied, dismissed with prejudice. But Ifeoma wasn't done. She smoothly presented our counterclaim for breach of agreement and legal fees. The judge granted it on the spot, adding that courts shouldn't be used for post-divorce regret. That's when Sabrina's mask cracked, just briefly. Gone was the polished facade. For a second, I saw the woman I'd once married, realizing she'd lost, and lost big. Chun avoided my eyes, probably calculating what this mess might do to his insurance premiums. Outside, we stood in the soft Seattle drizzle. She bet wrong, Ifeoma said. She thought you'd stay small. You didn't, and now she had to pay for it. Walking to my car, I felt something I hadn't in years. Pure, unwavering clarity, like the moment Sabrina said yes on that rooftop. Only this time I was celebrating alone. In the weeks after court, life felt still, like the hush after a storm. The air was finally quiet, clean. All the noise and tension that once felt like the center of the universe was suddenly just background static. I wrote one letter, no emails, no cryptic social posts, a real letter on real paper. Took 3 hours, crossed out sentences, started over. I wanted it to say 2 things, grace and finality, and it did. Sabrina, thanks for the quick exit. I couldn't have created this life with you still in it. The peace I have now is worth more than any payout. That was all I needed to say. Not some angry rant, not a list of betrayals, just the truth. Some people guide your path, others remind you to change direction. I sealed the letter, no return address, and dropped it off myself. It wasn't about closure. It was about moving forward, finally. The call started 3 days later. The first buzz during my morning coffee at Romano's. I watched commuters dash by like they were escaping something while her name blinked on my screen. I didn't answer. The second one came that evening while I was boiling pasta. I ignored it again. The third interrupted a perfect, dreamless sleep. This time, I shut my phone off and walked around Green Lake, where strangers fed ducks and held hands like life hadn't been cracked open recently. But the fourth time, I picked up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. Adrian? Her voice sounded smaller, unsure. Hi, Sabrina. I'm sorry, she blurted out. I was angry. I thought you'd hidden something from me. I thought you beat me somehow. Images flickered. Our rooftop start, the townhouse, shared dreams, her sharp laugh, the slow decay of us. I remembered the version of me that tried to earn her respect, and the version that finally stopped trying. Can we talk? Coffee? Dinner, maybe? I know I messed up. I wish you well, I said softly. Some bridges burned clean. I hung up before she could try to argue her way back in. Then I turned off my phone and went back to Romano's, to the smell of bread and the hum of people who didn't know or care who I used to be. Victor sent over a test link, one of his sleek updates to our latest feature. Keisha messaged about a Fortune 500 client win. Marta just texted, "Proud of how you stayed quiet." That one made me smile. A real smile, the kind that fills you up from the inside. People still ask if I felt revenge, if I took joy in watching Sabrina's case unravel, if it felt good to watch someone who underestimated me lose. The truth? No. Revenge means you still care. I didn't. What I felt was relief. Clean, full relief that it was finally over, that I could get back to writing my life without someone scribbling in the margins. The patent paid out big. The clause protected me. The trust kept things airtight. But none of that was the real win. The win was learning to laugh again. Really laugh. That brutal, honest kind of laugh that reminds you. Build quietly, protect what's yours, love carefully, and never explain your success to people who feed on your fear. Now I live above a bakery. Every morning smells like warm bread, and the canal below carries boats to places I've never seen. I have more than I'll ever need, but I still sip coffee at the same cafe, sit at the same table, and walk the same loop around the lake when I need to clear my head. My team is small and sharp. We make things that matter, real solutions for real people, not just flashy tools for shuffling wealth around. We grow on our own terms, at our own speed. Sometimes I think back to that rooftop night where I met a woman who seemed to have it all figured out, and I think of the man I was, eager, hopeful, blind to all the signs we were never headed in the same direction. I don't regret loving her, or marrying her, or the way it all crashed. Without that wreckage, I wouldn't have learned the difference between being someone's partner and being their asset. What I do regret, how long it took to realize the only person I needed to impress was me. Everything else? Just background noise. Noise that fades with time until you're left with a life that's yours, peace you earned, and the quiet knowing that sometimes, if you're lucky, the universe hands you exactly what you needed, even before you knew you needed it.